the finance markets were crazy. We were able to leverage and buy businesses on 4 or 5% interest. You fast forward 24 months, and this is why it's important to surround yourself with good people. Like, how much is it going to go up? Nobody pictured inflation was going to take off as crazy as it did. My friend, he hedged his. You could secure a facility at 4%. You could go out and spend $1 million, $2 million and hedge the interest. It's like a reverse mortgage. Here, everybody else's interest payments doubled, and he's now getting a check that's offsetting, bringing his interest back to 4. And I just remembered going, man, if I would have just learned one more pivot. I don't know if you've heard this, but as an entrepreneur, never waste a good recession. Mm-hmm. You learn so much, right? And you know, I felt like the last 3 years, I went through 3 recessions.
This episode is brought to you by One Accord. If you're a business owner thinking about a transition or exit in the next few years, listen to me. The number one reason that companies fail to sell or sell for far less than they should is really simple. The business still depends on the owner. You've heard it 1,000 times on this podcast. One Accord's Oasis strategic planning and execution system helps owners build leadership alignment, operational clarity, and discipline execution so they can run and grow without them. That's what creates valuation lift. That's what makes you buyer ready. Everything that I don't tell you listeners get an exclusive free value readiness snapshot to see exactly where your business stands today. All you have to do is go to oneaccord.co/oasis. That's OASYS /Josh Zolan. That's me. oneaccord.co/oasis, OASYS /Josh Zolan to get your complimentary value readiness snapshot today. Now, let's start the show. Am I correct? Did I hear that you were left on the side of a freeway when you were 6 months old?
Partially correct, but no. My mother was stopped while walking down the freeway.
With you?
Yes, with me.
Got it.
So people aren't supposed to be walking down the freeway, let alone having a kid with them. So that could cause great concern for Child Protective Services.
Yes, I would imagine.
Yeah. So that part of the story is absolutely correct.
Okay. So you started out in California. Where did you say in California?
Inland Empire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was born in Simi Valley.
Okay.
And so I spent the very early part of my life in and around Simi Valley, Chatsworth, Pasadena. My grandparents had a place in Pasadena.
Yeah.
And so I'm very familiar with
a little bit further east, more Riverside, Colton area.
Corona's down there, I think, somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Didn't spend a ton of time there, but that's at least where I was curated.
All right, cool. So then you were in and out of the foster care system. Help me understand the foster care system. Okay, I'm very ignorant to how this works.
Yeah.
I understand that it's a lot of times it's likened to a business.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So there's 2 sides of it, right? It's a government-controlled program, and you have foster parents, people that elect to do this as a living. Some are fostering to adopt, and some are fostering just to foster and give back and make that part of their life's purpose. But again, it's a government-controlled program. So foster care, if you think about it from the government side, I had asked myself that question a lot when I was growing up, because on the inside, it's very, very dysfunctional. And but as I got older and matured, I kind of put it through the lens of business. If you're tasked with being able to build a box and systems and processes around like hurt children, like that's a tough undertaking.
Yeah.
If our kids scrape their knee, like we feel pain for them, and just to see the ugliest side of life of what happens to children, to like have to kind of govern that. I couldn't imagine how you could because children need love and nurture and to be taught the life skills, right? But the foster care system's more triage, find a safe home, put them in a process and a system, and kind of hope they turn out okay.
Yeah.
So,
and you saw that from the inside out.
Totally, from the complete inside, where I saw the operations of it.
What did you learn from that? What did you take away from it? And I know there's a lot, but I'm going to ask you to hone in.
That's a deep question. I took away from it, and I've had different takeaways at different stages of maturity in my life. Initially, I took anger away from it. But, you get older and more mature. I took away from it that, there's really bad things out there that happen to really innocent people. And that's a tough thing to stomach as a parent, now. So, but arms you with life skills that almost put you in a whole different bracket. Not necessarily, obviously, by your choice, but this is where hyper resilience gets, curated. And, when you're fighting to survive as a child, I've always said this, the business world doesn't even compare.
Yeah. So. That's, it's interesting as I've heard bits and pieces and more of your story, both from you firsthand and, from a couple of the interviews that I saw. That's kind of what I was beginning to understand, is that there's strength built in the struggle. Yeah. And so I'm curious from your perspective, like there's a lot of people out there that go through hardship when they're young, right? And they almost fall in two brackets of people: those who become victims of it, and those who let it basically dictate where they end up in life, and then those who harness it and use it in a completely different way. And we'll get into kind of some of the things that you've done in business, but what advice would you give someone who might be struggling with the latter?
Yeah. Again, you learn this in business too. Your most days that you struggle the worst end up becoming your gems when you get to the other side. When you're fighting to stay alive, the only option is to win. So, that saying, you don't lose until you quit. And in life, we're not allowed to quit. So, just understanding that if you're in that struggle now and life doesn't make sense, there were a lot of times, and I'm not ashamed to say this now, but I questioned, like, what's the point of life?
Yeah.
Like, we're all here just kind of in this whirlwind, and you see a lot of bad things happen. You hear about some good things, and your lens really gets built on your surroundings, and it then starts getting baked into your subconscious. So you start operating, acting, and then seeing the world on a subconscious level that you don't even realize. And I would say that's probably the hardest thing to pull yourself out of. But if you're in it, just know that no matter how bad it is, somebody told me this early at probably some of the hardest years of my life. You've got it bad today. Somebody does have it worse. And not that makes it any better, but, paints perspective of, you think the world's collapsing around you and it's the worst that it could be. And there's somebody that's got a story that is 10 times worse than yours. And, that's perspective. But looking back on it now, going, I wouldn't have ended up anywhere I ended up had the chips not have fallen the way they did. So, hindsight being 2020, it's a real thing.
Can you point to any specific moments for you that helped you gain that perspective? Was there any turning points that you can pick out?
Yeah. So part of the story was the foster parents that adopted me. the father in the house, he ended up passing away. It was a very traumatic, sudden, quick, triage, figure out. It was just this like really traumatic morning. And
were you there for that?
Yeah, I was there. Sister came running upstairs, pounding on the door that, our dad was having a heart attack. And, I go downstairs, he's hunched over the table. I'm the oldest in the house, so I kind of, I've always been a leader, but when you're forged in that environment of having to lead, coach, and guide people, our house always had 10 people in it. It was a larger house for what foster care is.
You were the oldest, so how old were you?
At the time, I was 12.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. Still young.
Yeah, and when I look back on it now, and me and my fiance Jasmine, we talk about this all the time. I see a 12-year-old now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a baby. That's a baby. But in my mind back then, because of the environment and how I grew up, I thought I was a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So him passing away created a chaos in the house. And, if you thought about it in business, if you've got a manager and they quit, or you sell a company and, you got a new culture, leader in the house is gone, and teams, you understand different personalities in teams that all have to perfectly align to create something that works, right? You don't typically have a lot of the same exact personality on a leadership team, or typically husband and wife. They're typically polar opposites, right? So the imbalance that it created in our house, my mom, she just, she was too old and just gave up on life. She wasn't the one that was driving and leading a lot of it. So, when you lose that, everybody else downstream suffers. And, longer story short, I ended up feeling the best route was to be out on the streets, and, like having to teach yourself, okay, like this is your first night out on the streets. Like, all right, we got to check some basic boxes here. Like, all right, how am I going to feed myself? Where am I going to sleep? And
when you say out on the street, you mean literally on the street, or like?
Yeah, like skate park. You just ended up house surfing and couch surfing.
Homeless, essentially.
Say it again.
Homeless, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a very abusive household that was just not was not a healthy place to be, and it was better to not be there than to be in the house. And if I look back now, had I not cut that tie early enough in such a early development stage of my brain, I might have come out of the thing, really damaged.
Yeah.
So that was one of the moments where, okay, now once I put that behind me and I'm like, all right, you got to figure out how to eat, you got to figure out how to make money, you got to figure out where you're going to sleep, and like problem solving from there. It's like when you start a business. Okay, cool. We've got to assemble a team. We got to build some systems. So, that I would say was one of the early turning points. But I did, fortunately, some of the people I grew up around were business people. So I did see entrepreneur, type businesses and a little bit different way of thinking. So fortunately, all those things kind of intersected at a point where I was developing and is now ingrained in my DNA.
So you kind of explained, and I get the picture of like what drove you out of the house.
Yeah.
When you were on the street, what drove you back into something else?
Into something else in terms
of what drove you to what was the next step? Let's start there. What after you were?
Yeah. So I had been doing research. I was realizing how broken the system was, and I had started doing research on being able to legally remove yourself from the system. There's not your birth parents. There's a legal process. You talk about business agreements and being able to unwind them, or when things don't go to plan. And there's a process that you could, go in front of the court and tell them why you wanted to, not be, to be able to get out early, essentially get out of the agreement early. You technically, I think our agreement was something until 19. that the state would be willing to cover healthcare, food, and the monthly payments. And you could emancipate yourself, and you could, find a different. So I started doing research on this, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm old, but like the internet was just like a new thing.
Oh, yeah. You don't got to be old to say that.
And so I had to do some deep research.
Sure.
And I also realized that was super complicated, and all it had to do was kind of be her word against mine, and I just looked at it from a business deal, and I went, okay, like, for me to get my freedom and not have to grow up in this environment, I'm just going to detach myself from it, and I won't make any noise. I won't go complain to the court. I won't go tell people. You'll still get the money. I'll show up at school. Like, there won't be any red flags. And so that was kind of how that unfolded.
Okay. You're a boxer?
Grew up in the boxing gym, fought in the amateurs for many, many years. Decided that wasn't how I was going to make money in life, but the disciplines from boxing have always stuck with me, and it's one of the things I hold closest to my heart.
All right, cool. I want to talk a little bit about that. It's funny. So at the top of my paper here, I have 3 things written down. I won't tell you what the third one is yet, but the first one was resilience, which you already said. Second one's discipline, which you just said. So it's interesting just having these conversations. You kind of are inherently, I don't know, it tells me, I guess I'm on the right track with my questioning.
Yeah.
So your boxing career then, let's talk a little bit about that. First off, what got you into boxing?
Oh, okay. It was easy what I got into. I think it was 15, and I essentially got jumped by a few guys. One of the guys like came up running and punched me square in the back of the head. If you're beaten your whole life as a kid, like getting punched really is kind of like a brush of the shoulder. But I remembered, I'm like, I was super annoyed that I was distracted with these other guys, and then I got hit in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. And that just bothered me, right? I'm always like strategy and tactic and like, how do you get better?
Yeah.
So then I'm researching, like, long story short, I end up going, all right, cool. I need to go figure out how to train my reflexes and get in the boxing gym. So at 15, I walked into a boxing gym. So that
you just walked in.
Yeah, walked in and said, I want to learn. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You get the shit kicked out of you?
Initially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was first week. Yeah, they put me in with one of the pros. Dude like busted me all up. But, I was like, in the boxing gym, it's an out for a lot of kids that, are going through a tough time.
Okay.
Even in our gym now, there's a lot of kids that have lost parents, have parents struggling, like all the struggles. You could go into the boxing gym and that heavy bag, that speed bag, and also that connection with your trainer, it can make life be quiet for an hour or two. So it's good refuge.
I'm familiar with that. I have a fighting background, but not in the boxing discipline.
Yeah.
So I definitely resonate with, the structure, the outlet, and just the sheer, discipline of what comes with it and stuff. So what all did you learn? So no, let me rephrase this question. You still boxing today?
Won't stop. Yes.
Okay. So what do you take from your boxing career into business?
Oh, so many things.
Yes, let's talk about those.
Yeah, so many things. So one of the cool things that we've done with our team of guys is we've structured it like a business, like boxing at the highest level. It's legal agreements. It's assembling a team of specialized people in their areas. And I really applied a lot of the things that I learned to business to our team. It taught me more personal skills when I was younger, but now we view boxing as a business. So, there's been 2 avenues there. But yeah, just understanding team, and how do you predict the best outcome? How do you put the right resources? How do you prepare? What's the proper amount of time? It's a physiological, sport. So you got to understand, a bunch of different areas that all tie together: strength and conditioning, nutrition, brain training, exercises, the whole entire piece. But then a lot of guys lack the business and the legal side to understand a lot of the agreements they get into and what they mean. So we've, had a very good general business overview and have applied it to boxing, and just best family too. The boxing world at times, because it's the fight business, business is war, and there's a lot of that zero sum gain mentality in business, and boxing, you got good people, you got bad people, you got good business people, and you got bad business people. And if, as I tell our guys, if you're going to agree to do this, you got to do it all the way. And if you could lose your life in the process, you can't spare any resource. The stakes are as high as they possibly could be. From risk mitigation, it is the most risky thing that you can do in life to make money, in my opinion.
What's that?
Boxing. Professionally. We don't know enough about the brain, but what we do know about the brain is, one, it controls everything, and two, without it, you're nothing.
Yeah.
And boxing is constant impacts on the brain.
Right.
And, even how a lot of guys cut weight and they dehydrate, and it actually shrinks the brain, and now has created a bigger gap between the brain and the protective layers and the skull. It's not talked about in boxing as much as I would like it to be, but hydration and going through the camps and how doing it proper is so critical to, one, having a successful fight, too, but long-term health of the guys. There's no amount of money. And I think about this in the trades too. You have technicians that make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you have boxers that make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I believe that you are being paid for your skill set, but because it's physical and you have to use your body, they're also paying you for your body and the damage later in life. And I just don't really hear it or see it talked about as much. So, I'm really big on just making sure our guys and the last guys that I trained with, I went through my diligence process, right? And I trained at 6 or 7 different gyms in the Valley. And I'm not saying the other gyms are bad people. I just did my diligence and wanted to make sure I ended up around the most honest, selfless people that, weren't selfish and just trying to make 10 grand on you to turn you pro. Whether you have money or you don't have money, they're not going to treat you any different. And I just, fortunately for me, through that diligent process, I found one of the best families in the sport, and it's just been an honor to be on their side and on this ride. We've been on some of the biggest shows the last 5 years in the sport, and it's just been an awesome team.
How do you prepare mentally for a fight before you step into the ring? Not like a physical preparation, leading up to the fight, but literally right before you step in and right before that bell rings. Like, what are you telling yourself?
Are you saying on the fighter side, or me being in the corner, or with the team? Because there's two different avenues there.
Yeah, let's talk about the fighter side.
There is a phase, and a lot of fighters go through this. The closer you get to the fight, the more you end up zoning out of your environment. So you can be in tune and be tuned in with your team, but your body almost takes you somewhere else, that you're now in fight mode. You're now your brain's now working, and you're thinking about the fight and the outcomes, and wondering how he's going to react or she's going to react to certain punches. And before every time I fought, I would go into my music and I would kind of zone out, and I'd try to keep my body relaxed and try to calm the race mind. And you always got to get through those nerves. I don't care what fighter tells you they just live and love to be in the ring. There's a leading up to it that you got to push yourself off the edge. And like, it becomes real when you're walking out to the ring and you're just in fight mode. But, there's a lot of mental things and preparation that you go through leading up to fighting. But really, you're calming your mind. We're doing a lot of like personality assessments too, which also isn't done in boxing, but it's very interesting because there's different ways people like to prepare depending on your style, which we use this in business, right? So it's another business tool that we've been applying to boxing. And there's a little bit different ways, but me, I was more introverted, and I kind of just wanted to be zoned out with me and my trainer, have my music in, not really focused on the guys around me, don't care about my opponent. I'll adjust when I'm in there, and that for me was.
That's interesting. So I would imagine those who don't box, they still. Well, I know it, right? I hear it from the listeners of the show, and they still have this race mind, and it's really whatever the event is, whether it's boxing, whether it's stepping on stage to talk to a bunch of people in a public speaking, whether it's stepping into a boardroom and addressing their team, or maybe it's just a one-to-one conversation that is going to be hard.
Yeah,
there's all these different reasons why people's mind races. So, what advice would you give to those people to help calm their mind no matter the circumstance they're walking into?
Yeah, I would say learn yourself the best, right? And there's a lot of personality assessments out there that, you could do a 20-minute questionnaire or even shorter, and really will kind of bucket you in a personality type that'll tell you, hey, this person likes to calm down through these type of remedies. Everybody's going to be slightly different. There's, if you call it the 10 main personalities, several of them are going to have overlap. But, for me, for example, if I like to be kind of secluded and get myself psyched up and ready, a different personality like a socializer or a philosopher that they want to be around a large group of people, and they want to have cameras around them before they go out, and they want a hype man who's gonna get them there. And I've done public speaking, and I've obviously fought in a ring, and I've also given board and group presentations to our company. There's a part where in all of those same scenarios where once you kick off and you're in it, you zone out and you enter you enter your flow state. And
I call it the blackout phase.
Yeah, blackout, but then entering the flow state where it's naturally coming out of you. You're feeding off of these kind of background things, but you're not really focused on them because you're just delivering the goods. So
yeah. Okay. One of the things that you said was transferable in the boxing world were predictable outcomes.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that you mentioned. Help me understand this a little bit better when relating boxing to business. What is the link of predictable outcomes?
Sure. You probably need to hone it into a specific area of business, but business is all taking risk and assembling a team and finding a vein that you can harvest, and understanding where the blind spots are, where the roadblocks are going to be, where the team needs some diversity to kind of offset how your personality is, where they can fill your strengths. And tactical, right? Once you're out in the field and you know who your competition is and you know how you make money and you know what the risks are, boxing is the same way. So, in business, you got employees and they're changing an HVAC unit, what are the risks? One, they could get hurt. Two, the unit that they could be installing wasn't tested properly and we're going to have a redo, or their good quality control wasn't done and, you're going to have a freon leak. In boxing, you fortunately, especially in the highest stakes of boxing, there's a lot of good data on your competition. And that's what I think a big part of our job as a team is to help, the boxer, the operator, see the path. And, when you're on the battlefield, sometimes it's easy to let the lines get distorted, and sometimes you don't make the best decisions because you're in a fight.
Sure.
But when you've got a team and a sounding board that can come help wheel you back in, give you new areas that you can focus on and areas to watch out for risk. Boxing's movement, it's styles, it's testing, seeing what punches work, how they react. Business is the same way, right? You're out there and, hey, we came up with this bucket of revenue and should we really focus on this, or is it just, it's not going to be that effective? If 80% of your revenue is coming from changing HVAC units, like, let's double down and keep changing HVAC units. Like, if you want to sub out, some of the electrical and some of these other portions, and maybe that only makes up, 10% of your business, you probably don't want to change the whole strategy around just to becoming an electrician, right? Because you kind of touch on it. So,
okay, fair enough. So, last question about boxing. What do you think would be different about your life if you never found it? If you never found boxing?
Oh, that one gave me chills. I probably wouldn't be sitting here on this podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, then let's get into that. Tell me. Let's talk about your journey into business. Maybe touch a little bit on your introduction into the trades, because I know that a good portion of your life was spent as a mechanic, right? Yep. So maybe touch on that, but then let's get into how you found business ownership, your way to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I think about that one a lot, and the guy that last trained me as a boxer, he's become one of my closest friends, and we talk about it all the time. Had at a time of going into the boxing gym at 15, where the rules and guidelines for boxing, especially if you're going to compete, you have to stay disciplined. You have to hone in on your health. You can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't stay out late. So it's very restrictive. And as a foster kid at 15, in the streets most of, that teenage childhood, without those restrictions, man, I could have just ended up in all the wrong circles and picked up a ton of really bad habits that would have led to some really bad outcomes. So, I always tell people that boxing is one of the most instrumental pieces in my childhood, that had I not found that, the outcome more than likely would have been drastically different. So really learning that discipline, that structure, when everybody else was, oh, cool, smoking cigarettes and, and turning 21 and going out and drinking and all that. Like, I wasn't doing any of that, and I ended up getting enjoyment from, health and dieting, and also realizing, and I teach this to our teams now, going into business, it is war. And I'm not saying that people haven't achieved it. I just like to be able to predict the outcome more. If we're all healthy, there's a good read that I share with people. It's the 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. It's a great 15-minute read. And there's a part in the beginning of the book where he talks about the food that you eat is essentially what gets broken down, goes into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream is what regenerates your cells and essentially makes up your whole body, right? So your brain, hydration, and food is directly linked to what you eat.
Yeah. So, and that's getting more and more difficult to come by these days, man.
Oh, man, it's terrible.
It is awful. I have this conversation with my wife all the time. Like, we're literally considering just getting a greenhouse and growing our own food now, because it's just, everywhere you look, it's food poisoning, it's salmonella, it's E. coli, it's all this shit. And I mean, did you see this thing that just came out about Campbell's? Did you see that on the news?
Didn't.
Oh my God. The guy at Campbell's, one of the marketing people, I think it was, at Campbell's, basically said that, and sorry, Campbell's, my show's not huge enough for you to care right now, but like they came out and said that essentially the people are eating 3D printed chicken.
Yeah.
And he essentially just crushed 100 years of Campbell's history by saying that, but this is what we're up against today, man. It's so difficult to eat healthy, and I resonate with that so much. Like, people think that health is running and going to the gym and lifting weights and all this kind of stuff, man. It starts with what you put into your body.
100%. And I think you have to have the mindset to be able to understand that, but I do think food you've got to be able to flip the switch where you understand food then becomes most important, because if that's what's making up your mind is what, your conditioning and where all your thoughts and your memories are going. I was really freaked out by food. But then now as I get older and I start to think about it in mass scale business, if you really look at hunger in the country and in third world countries, we've also got this major problem of, well, how do you feed people at a mass scale? Like food insecurities and the amount of people that go days without eating. Like, with how wealthy this country is, it shouldn't be a thing. And if we've been fortunate enough to have been able to build businesses and we've got to be able to contribute to that. So I think the lines got crossed when it was, okay, how do you feed America at scale? And then how do you make it sustain? And because in the capitalist environment, costs are always rising and you got to get better, faster, quicker, and more efficient. Unfortunately, the byproduct of that is a lot of fillers and things in food
bioengineered foods
are not good for the long term of your body. I just went through this with my kids. I was on a little bit tighter schedule this morning, so I worked out in my garage at the house, and my two sons are in there lifting weights. And my son comes out and he's, I'm hungry. And okay, well, I'm going to keep working out, bring me what you'd like to eat and I'll let you know if I think that, because mom handles the food, right? And she has a very similar mentality to me, but, I'm not always there for breakfast.
Sure.
So I'm like, I know what he likes, but, then he brings out a bag of chips and I go, well, no, that bag of chips is, it's all this phosphate starch. Like, there's nothing in that that's good for you. And he's like, this is a 6-year-old. And it's so amazing to see him adopting these things and going, there's really no point in that right now. That's really unhealthy for you. And then he goes back in and he grabs, he started with a bag of chips that I would say is, I'm not proud to say is in our pantry, but, we also have, a large family that,
I get it, man.
They're not going to eat as restrictive as us.
Yeah.
And, that would be more like the treat. And even that's not good if you're going to reward once a month and some indulgence, even though there's a physiological part of that where that makes sense for the body. But, he brings out another snack and it's actually a lot more healthy, but still there's zero net gain from it. So I'm like, that's just all pure carbs. It's not going to do anything for you. It's not even the right type of energy. He's processing it. And he comes back out with dates. And I'm like, there you go. 2 of those, you're solid. That's the right carb. That's the right energy.
Carb, fiber, and, absolutely.
Even seeing that through my son, where I could have gone, eat the potato chips. Because that would have been the easiest, most convenient thing. I'm in the middle of working out and, I'm pretty strict on my time and I could have, have the chips, right? Yeah, but to spend that extra 20 minutes coaching him and it's crazy. So my son now will say, because I've told them my beliefs, but I also want my children to develop their own mindset and to make their own decisions. So, but I've told him my personal belief is most sugars are a different form of poison. So now my 6-year-old says, I don't like sugar because it's poison. And he says, and it kills you slowly and you don't even know it.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Prouder moments that I'm having with
their friends are going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But you know what? That is great. And And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because this is an important topic for especially my listeners. You know, we talk to a lot of high performers, a lot of people who, it's just easier to be like, go eat the chips. You know, and when I say easier, like it's a trade-off, right? It's okay. Yeah, you can gain that extra 10, 20 minutes now by not coaching, your kids. But what's it going to do long term? What's that one decision? How is that going to shape, the future of their health and their well-being and their mind? And I mean, you have no idea, what it could spawn into. So I think the importance of that small thing can't be overstated.
Yeah, and because people end up figuring out like how much diligence I've done on food and health, there's probably a lot of people would argue with the way I eat. I've been vegan for 15 years.
Oh, really?
And usually when I share that with a bunch of meat eaters, I'll immediately back it up with, I can also bench 350, so don't try any of that. Don't try any of that soft talk with me. But I made a lot of the changes just based on how my body was feeling. And one of the things I learned in boxing is, especially when you're going into weight cutting, your portions are getting smaller, but they're really high net gain foods. And I loved developing this mindset early that food is like revenue. You can have a bunch of revenue you put in your body that causes a loss at the end of the month, or you can put a bunch of food in your body that's high gross profit, high net, high free cash flow.
I love that, man.
And most of what country and the world has been conditioned on is a lot of revenue that produces negative net income. And we all know negative net income is not long-term sustainable. And I have grown really fond of life and just the opportunities and how big the world is. And I want to live a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about business. Let's shift. I love the health conversation, and we could talk the entire time on that. But I want to make sure we get to some of this business stuff. So help me understand, what was your introduction into the workforce and business ownership?
So workforce, the foster family that I had grown up with, my appointed godfather, and his brother, they were entrepreneurs. So they had restaurants, construction company, drag racing team. And that may sound a little silver spoonish, but they didn't give me anything.
I'm getting that.
They didn't give me anything. And at the end of the day, what it did show me, though, was that you can have an idea and then you can turn it into a business. So I was introduced to the entrepreneurial environment very young, and they had actually let me, I told you when I was trying to figure out where to sleep, what to eat, and how am I going to make money, I was able to bus tables under the table for cash.
Nice.
And that was the first way that I ended up making money. So I would say there was a stint that I had done when I was in school. They got the programs, and hey, take this home, go to try to sell these bars of chocolates.
Oh yeah.
I had sold the round lollipops in the clear wrapper, like big round lollipops. They were like $10 lollipops or something. I don't remember what the And I remembered going and knocking on doors, and you're knocking on a door and you're so nervous before it opens, but then you're this cute little 12-year-old kid, and you're like, I'm trying to sell these for school, and you don't even realize what you're doing at the time.
Yeah.
But, it's
you're just asking people for money, so it's weird, right?
But then you're creating a link that, okay, good cause. There's a good mission behind it. There's a vision, there's to some benefit of this. There's an exchange of goods, and there's an outcome from it. So I did the newspaper door to door, and I did lollipops door to door. And then I went into bussing tables, and I figured out you can make money from all of it. But, I wasn't I wasn't passionate about selling sugar lollipops or newspapers.
I'm here to sell you this poison.
But I was passionate about seeing, bussing tables, we made tips.
Sure.
And that's the service business, right? And, you're cleaning a table and you're bringing people more water and those sort of things, and they're paying you for that, right? So people are going to pay for a good service that fits that moment in time. So being introduced to the entrepreneurial spirit, having that door-to-door salesman introduction, I was probably 12, and understanding you can make money from that, but then going into the restaurant and business and understanding that people will pay for that service. Those were the earliest things that I was introduced to, which I'm so grateful for, because again, had the chips not have fallen that way, things would have turned out different.
It's so funny, man. I haven't really made the association until just now hearing you say that, but I was into a lot of that stuff as a kid too. And I grew up on a farm. So like all my neighbors were a half mile apart.
Got it.
And I would get up. It was called Jump Rope for Heart.
Yep. I remember Jump Rope for Heart.
And there you would get the catalog, and there'd be the first page, and that would be the smallest prizes. Then there'd be the last page that would have all the biggest prizes, like the really cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always bound and determined to get on that last page. So I would go around to all of our neighbors, half mile on my bike from sunrise to sunset, knocking on these doors, asking them to buy these frozen cookie dough and the chocolates or whatever it was. But it's funny because like I hadn't really made the association to entrepreneurship until I just heard the same thing from you.
Yeah. High ticket closer. You're trying to be on the back page.
Yeah,
I was selling premium candy and a subscription based newspaper.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ironically, and just dawned on me now too, and it's so crazy how you start diving into your childhood later. This is what fascinates me about the mind. That I had also sold steaks door to door at one point. Okay. Ironically, ended up becoming vegan, but sold steaks, door to door. So had a lot of that door to door experience early on, and that nervousness, and then kind of getting through that.
Yeah.
And if people have a need for it, you don't have to do a ton of selling. There is a psychology to selling, but my background's more technical expert. So like, as long as I have the data and how you're going to benefit from this, like you're going to get it as honest as possible.
So let's stop there for just a sec. I want to kind of point to any of my listeners who didn't have this same experience as a kid, where they're going door to door and they're selling shit for Jump Rope for Heart or frozen steaks, but and they have this nervousness. Right, they maybe they are entrepreneurs, but they've got this nervousness, and it's hard for them.
This is my favorite.
Yeah, let's talk about
this. This is my favorite.
Give some advice on this.
That feeling in those environments is what I tell people I've been chasing for 20 plus years. When you don't feel that in your regular activity, there could be a high probability that you're not growing. And I always tell people that nervousness you get, that stomach, that unsure, that to me has always kept me on the right path and led towards growth and progress.
So lean into it. Chase it.
Lean into it. Okay. It's not a bad thing. On the other side of that could be growth. You're going to learn different risk profiles, and
sure.
If you don't have a parachute, some cliffs you shouldn't jump off of. Like,
fair enough.
But it's the feeling that I always know I'm on the right track.
I love that. Okay. So let's fast forward then. When did you officially hang a shingle? Your own business?
Own business. I started, I had two companies that I started before the automotive business that ended up being the takeoff business. The first business was a company called Primary Medical Specialists. And that traumatic event that I told you about with my dad waking up, super old school. And then he grew up in that era where any ache or issue you had a medication for it. So he just so happened to be a good product of the system, and he was on 20 medication. And when the ambulance, when the firefighters and the paramedics came into the house, they're asking me, what is he on any medication? Is he actually having an overdose? And, he wasn't able to communicate with us then. And, I opened up the medicine cabinet and I went, yeah, this whole bottom row, this is all his. And I noticed the guy was like scrambling because they have a guy having a cardiac event, and then you've got your triage guy, your guy writing it up. And, the amount of medication like that he had to go, it was cholesterol, it was high blood pressure medication, it was uppers, it was downers. it was everything. Like, it bothers me because it's like, how could somebody need to be on 10 medication?
Because each medication has to counteract the medication he takes before it.
And that's always drilled into my head that there is scenarios where medication is needed, but there's a lot of medication that is not needed if you correct the health of your body.
Right.
And I saw this guy like frantically going through, the medication. He's trying to write them all down, the prescriptions. How many of these does he take? Do you actually see him take these? This one doesn't look like it's open. Was he taking this one? And that was such a weird, still, it's just like burned into my brain. I see the tile on the counter. I can see the guy standing there, the cabinet open. And like when one of your employees is flustered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just know like, hey, dude, you got to calm down and breathe and take a step back. And I had always had that image burned in my brain. And as you start going through what needs could be and how you can serve people, I came up with this idea that if there was an easier way that he could have accessed his medical records then, that could probably save some lives.
Uh-huh.
So then I started doing research on how many people die every year from a medical misdiagnosis and how some of it's related to medications they're allergic to and improperly diagnose and using a different medication for something that they think it's not. So I came up with this idea. I said, you know what? What if there was an easier way for medical professionals to access medical records? This is the internet was still kind of new. This was like, okay, do I make a PHP website? What is this whole HIPAA compliance? And okay, I'm going to make a client portal. So we came up with this idea that we were going to make online client portals that housed high risk or people that had medications or medical conditions. And we gave them a bracelet that let the people know that they were high risk and a login to their medical profile. So somebody's having a heart attack, paramedic shows up, knows he's got a high risk band on, can see, you can go to this website and, you can log in and see what the person's on. That was my first business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How about your second business?
Second business, I went back into service.
Okay.
So first business lasted, a whole year. I put together a call center, employees, and
how old were you there?
18.
Okay.
And we're selling medical profiles. And while I was passionate about starting the idea, it was really depressing because you're talking to really sick people. And then not that there's not a need for that, but it's if you've got this health conscious, what I started the business for, going through it and you have clients that are dying and it's just some that are, really overweight and you feel bad for them and you just want to be able to contribute and help them in a different way versus, hey, now I'm building a business that's actually somewhat contingent on you being unhealthy and being on medication. So my passion for it started fading and I'm spawning out of that, I'm like, what, I really want to go start a health fitness business that could help people, not need to get
360 degree.
Yeah. So, but ended up not doing that. I fell into a niche. This was the first where I was like, wow, we're making money. Electronic repair. So we repaired laptops, TVs, phones. And this is really the first time I figured out you could buy in bulk your cost of goods and your raw materials. And there was a need for, you drop your iPhone, you shatter the case. Nowadays, I don't know what it costs, but a screen replacement back in the day were probably charging $80 or something like that. But the screens were costing us $2-3. I had a tech that was able to swap them out in like no time. We're dealing with water damage, and not to be trademarked here by Apple, but then we started honing in on Apple products.
Okay.
So I tell people this in business. When you're starting something from scratch, you try a bunch of different things to develop revenue, but when you find that vein, double down on it and go harvest.
Yeah.
And Apple products had the highest need, and the second we fixed something for resale, it was gone instantly. We didn't hold product more than 24 hours, and it was amazing. Now we had to create this buying funnel and had to make sure the technician had enough capacity to be able to fix hundreds of phones. What was interesting, if I back up a little bit, and this is where I really developed passion for business. And how critical it is for you to be passionate about what you're going to choose to do. Because I ended up not becoming passionate about fixing electronics. And so moved on, right? We were making decent money. That was going to be my first $1 million business. But I was just like, I don't really enjoy this.
Yeah.
And as I look back and relate that to the electronics business and to the medical profile business, there was a funny product that came out after. A couple years after I walked away from the medical business, and it was a company called Life Alert. Somebody really passionate about it was willing.
So instead of a bracelet, the necklace with the
necklace. Alert, call center, contacting 911, triage, dispatch. Amazing. Had I been passionate about the business, I would have found ways to keep pivoting it, right? And finding a way to have deeper impact and just constantly figuring it out. And the electronics business, for example, and I'm not saying that I missed the ball or anything. I just didn't have the passion for it. Mm-hmm. The electronics business, I'm trying to figure out how to get to scale, and I'm seeing, you got to hire more technicians, and you got to have this huge buying funnel, and I really don't like it. We're making pretty good money, and just I'm not passionate about it. It's not keeping me up at night anymore. And I move on from that, and then there's this company I think it was called like Gazelle or something like that. They ended up being acquired by Assurion, the insurance company for phones. But then you started seeing ads. Do you remember many years ago you started seeing ads on TV like, hey, we'll buy your broken phone. Yeah. You see them all over now. You got these little pop-ups in the mall.
And they got these envelopes you put it in or whatever.
Put it in the envelope, you send it. I mean, they turn that into a massive business, right?
Yeah.
Had I been passionate about it, I would have figured out that avenue, but I was not passionate about the business. So, just really, made me dig down and try to figure out, what am I passionate about? And I noticed I always kept gravitating back towards the trades and to, automotive. And there was something about being in the trade initially that I thought, man, to go build something really big, you got to go do something in healthcare, or you got to go do something in an office with a suit and a tie.
The flashy things, the things that everybody thinks you have to do.
Yeah, like Wall Street and all these other things.
Weight coat, lab coat.
And it just hit me one day. I sat back and I went, oh my gosh, this is a huge business. And there's a massive need for it. Yeah. Who else is going to paint this car or change this motor or come change the AC? All right, we're on to something. Like, okay, now how do we do it as a business? So
I want to pause there before we get into how you did it as a business. This passion conversation, this is really interesting. I actually write about this in the book. How do you balance passion versus practicality, right? How do you find your passion in the wake of having to provide?
So this is a great question. Practicality, right? Like, go try it. If the marketplace pays you for it, it's practical, right?
Fair enough.
But this is what I figured out. May not work for everybody, but I get asked this question a lot. And I challenge people to go back and say, if you had to do this one thing for the rest of your life and not get compensated for it, what would you do? And that's a real thought-provoking question, because we're all in this system of doing things for money and everything requires money. But what you're passionate about, you'll do in lieu of the money.
It's good advice. What if somebody loses passion? What if they have passion or they think they have passion, but then it fades? What do you say about that?
And I've had that happen with me. Like, I thought I was going to be a professional boxer and I thought I was going to make billions of dollars in the electronics repair business. Again, if you're willing to do it and not get paid, you do whatever it takes. And that's where really honing in on it. If you're truly passionate about it, the passion doesn't fade. There's times where it can dim down if you're going through a really challenging time and you're questioning yourself. That's why passion's so important, because those times are going to pop up. And when they do, if you're passionate about it, you don't quit. You pivot, you weather the storm, and you figure out a new way to go about it. And that's all business is. Yeah. It's pivoting. You look at the wake of most businesses right now. So many are being disrupted by AI, where it's been so contingent on this person doing this set of tasks. And now that can be done by a computer model.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you going to do to pivot?
Right.
So
we're going to be forced to.
Yeah.
All right, so automotive. You're passionate about automotive, and you get back into that.
Yeah.
What does that business look like? Where does it start? Where does it end?
So I ended up developing a knack. I went back into automotive because, ironically, as a tech, you make good money.
Yeah.
And I go back into automotive, and I ended up having a knack. I ended up getting moved around to a lot of underperforming locations, and just figuring out where the bottlenecks are, where the issues are, and working through that and turning them into high performing locations. And I noticed in the corporate ladder, and this is just, I've only had very short periods of time where I've truly been employed. I do better in an entrepreneurial environment. That in the automotive space, and this is similar to HVAC, plumbing, electrical. Yeah, you can work in somebody's system, but if you're really good at it and you're super efficient, people kind of build a box around you, and yeah, you need your employees to follow your guidelines, but typically they leave you alone.
Yeah.
And I was able to really, at least when I went back into working, I was kind of given like free reign, like, hey, you guys are super efficient, like, go figure it out. And I'm working for $1 billion public company at the time, and I'm like, they really just kind of drop you off, throw the keys, and go like where's the operating manual, where's the book, where's the training?
Yeah, right.
And like none of it was there. And you end up building teams, and
sure.
and you get good with those teams. I guess it doesn't work out for everybody that way, but for me that was how it went. And then I just realized I'm a builder, fixer, grower. I like hiring maintainers. Like maintenance isn't really my thing. And in most business models, for somebody else, you're going to be capped. There's a ceiling and a cap. It's going to be either this is the most amount you could produce, this is the most amount they'll give you territory of, this is the most amount you can sell with the tools you've been given. Entrepreneurship, there's no cap. And the ceiling is wide open.
You're your cap, right? In entrepreneurship, let's be clear with the audience. Like, there's a cap, but it's in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I just so happen to have a really high threshold for risk and trying new things. And
wonder where that came from.
Pivoting. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by One Accord. They're the experts in helping business owners prepare for transition, succession, or exit. Guys, here's the truth. Most business owners wait way too long. They know they should build stronger leadership teams, document processes, clean up the financial reporting, all the things that we talk about on this show, but they stay stuck in the day-to-day operations, and the business just never truly becomes transferable. One Accord's Oasis system, though, changes all that. It's a proven framework that helps you create alignment across your team, build discipline, execution, execution habits, which is huge, and increase company value, which is the entire point. So when you do decide to transition, you're not scrambling. You're ready. Buyers notice the difference. Trust me, multiples increase and you, the owner, get the transition on your own terms. Everything they don't tell you, listeners, get access to a complimentary value readiness snapshot. It's a short assessment that highlights your strengths, your risks, and the hidden opportunities to grow enterprise value for your own company. Start your value readiness snapshot at oneaccord.co/oasis. That's OASYS /Josh Zollin. Again, that's oneaccord.co/oasis, OASYS /Josh Zollin. That's me for your exclusive podcast offer. Back to the show. So what was the journey through the business that you grew in the auto industry? What did that look like and where did you get to?
Yeah. While I was working for this company, I'm super grateful for them to have given me this opportunity to learn and have free reign. And not everybody can flourish in that environment, but for me, where I'm kind of used to going out into the open and having to figure out how to put structure, process, and procedure to something and then focus on making it efficient, that was a super grateful time in my life. And I ended up being capped. And my passion starts fading because now I'm capped and the brakes are on, and brakes aren't always a bad thing. I've learned a lot by not applying enough brakes. So my personality now says I cover both the gas and the brake. But when I was capped, I said, you know what? I've made a fair amount of money. A couple $100,000 in the bank as a fresh, 21-year-old. And 21, 22. And, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to take some time off. I'm going to reset. We've got this place at max efficient. It wasn't going to do another dollar.
Yeah. And to be clear, you were working for a company.
Yes. Yeah. And that place was literally efficient front to back. There was no more efficiency to squeeze from it except your normal year-over-year growth. We had such an awesome team that we just dialed in.
Nice.
And, I just was like, all right, I got to pause because something's wrong with me internally and I'm missing something, And I started mapping out going, all right, if this is like the normal path in life where you're going to make money for a certain amount of years, you're going to put it into an investment account, you're going to make 5%, kind of year over year, I could probably be done with this thing in several short years. Technicians and boy, do we need them. They're the most highest contributors to our organizations. But man, if you put your head down in your best years and you just grind it out as a tech, you can put a couple $1,000,000 in the bank over a 15, 20-year career if you're smart about it. That for me, terrified me. I'm like, okay, I'm on a fast path to that.
Stagnancy?
Yeah. And I was just that anxiety flew through the roof, and I'm like, what else can I do?
Because you weren't building, fixing, or growing something.
Yeah, I was kind of stuck in a box, and that box was making great money, but I felt my impact and touch could be so much more. And this is where I really learned the quality of people you surround yourself with and the team you select. If there's no other advice in business, getting your team right is the most critical. And we're super intentional about that. We don't always get it right. When somebody new gets seated, you've got an integration period and really understanding everybody's personality. But that team that I had built that turned that business around, and I've always been in turnaround. I love seeing broken, messy, just because there's huge value gain from that on the other side, right? And the team that I had built in that location, we had a couple former Army guys. One I picked up literally off the streets. He was a motor T in the Army, and guy got out of the military, was trying to job hop, and he just couldn't find his thing. And this is what I love about the trades. It's like the home of the Lost Boys.
Yeah.
Forged and taught that guy skill. It gives me goosebumps right now. That guy called me a few years ago and thanked me for his career that he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars now. And this was a guy that was, he was homeless, man. And that's where I built a really strong team. And when I said, guys, I'm capped and I'm out, they blindly said, wherever you're going, we're going. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And they said, we'll still follow you there.
We're with you, Hefe, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What a testament.
And that was how our company was birthed.
Really?
Yeah. Started in a garage from that same conversation. And before I knew it, we had more work than we know what to do with. And that thing flywheeled and took off.
Okay. So the area of business and automotive you were in, bodywork, collision?
Collision repair.
Collision repair.
I started in mechanical in the dealership space and ventured over into collision repair, and the two crossover. It's like, an HVAC. There's crossover in electrical and plumbing, and ironically roofing. So these things are all interwebbed, but that's how the automotive ecosystem also is.
That's interesting. I want to pause for a second there before we even go forward, and just take a second to really recognize the advice that you just gave about finding a team and what's involved in that from a leadership perspective, like the reasons that these people blindly followed you to basically into the unknown.
Yeah.
Right. This is something that I can't stress enough to the people out there, is like those who think they find pride in doing it yourself. And for those who can't see me right now, I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
Right? Doing it yourself. Nobody who's ever accomplished anything of this magnitude or of magnitude at all can be considered doing it themselves. They all had these teams. And so from your perspective, Jacob, what made the relationship so strong? Like, what was that dynamic that allowed those people to say, we're with you, we don't care about anything else?
Yeah. Maybe partially around my background of wanting to create an environment where people can thrive and having to be the one to structure that. I've been honed in on early, like, find the right person for the right seat. And growing up in the streets and around like a lot of bad people, I developed this early mentality that I was so strict on. Don't lie, cheat, or steal from me, and I'll figure out a way that, we can grow together. And in what I noticed in the trades is there's a lot of good, hardworking people that want an opportunity, get overlooked. They might have tattoos, might have gotten arrested for, something stupid when they were 18. Just all these things that they kind of get passed over for. Guy gets out of the military. They don't give him any guidance. He's got a VA card that he can go check in, but he ends up getting into drinking and is homeless. And the guy's 20 years old. Like, how is that a thing? And recognizing where people had good character. If you have good character, and you really see that in the bad times, not the good times really mask who somebody really is. It's when the rubber meets the road and it's a struggle that you really get to see what somebody's made out of. And that business that I had built that team with, we went into a distressed operation. It was, at the time, it was probably losing $50,000 a month. And, corporate world fire all the management and, rip it out and start over. And I didn't realize that's what I was walking into. The guy that I was working for at the time, brings me to this location and says, all right, here you go. You and this other guy, you guys got the keys. And I went, we have the same title. Like, this place isn't, well, today you're going to be letting somebody go that's been here failing for, 4 years. All right. And the team that I ended up rebuilding, we didn't have all the initial technical skills, but there was the will and it was good character. These were people that were willing to work hard and they meant well. You knew their character was good. When you grow up in the streets This is something that I've been blessed with. So from that traumatic experience, my intuitive sense with people, I've always said I can read somebody within a couple minutes of knowing them. And even on the way over here, I had a really bad experience, not personally for me, but for a dear friend. I won't go too far into it, but I knew years ago, 10 years ago or so, I said, there's something wrong with those couple guys. I can't put my thumb on it. I'm just telling you something's wrong. And just this last week, they just showed to my friend how truly terrible they are, really, as people. So that early team that we built, I said, you know what? Let me find good, hardworking people that want a shot. And I gave people a shot that didn't have the experience. And this is what I also loved about the trades. And the way training is going right now, like you can trade somebody for the automotive repair space. You got some that are a little bit more technical, but a lot of your HVAC units, it's the same four main manufacturers. Plumbing, you got to get really artistic and be able to bend pipes and glue things together. And electric is understanding currents and testing and how much can go through wires. The way AI is moving, but the way companies have evolved in being able to train at least entry level. We all say this, and I haven't been the biggest believer of it, that, it's just technician shortages. I went to a remote town. So you want to talk about technician shortage, it was a real thing. And this company had a horrendous reputation. So that also made it a little bit tougher. So it's like, okay, if I've got this kind of 2-year window, like let me home grow some people. Let me see if this works. And let me put this guy over here and let him try this 10 times and see if he's naturally good at it or not. And I ended up finding where people's sweet spot was. And I built this team that everybody had a specific section. It was really big on lean process. And if you look at a lot of the company names, it's more around, these Japanese philosophies of all that relate back to lean process. And I always portion things off in the business, every compartment. And, instead of kind of letting one person be a jack of all trades, I broke a lot of things up and I found each guy that was really good at a certain area, and I just gave them their chance. Giving them their chance probably didn't solidify it, but when you give guys a chance who maybe in life don't think they have a chance, that creates a bond, but then you get to test it too. There's things that happen in the trades, where people make mistakes and they can end up costing the company a lot of money. And there's one story, the gentleman that I told you that I took off of the streets, he's putting a huge 3500 dually on the alignment machine. And the town we were in was a big RV town. A lot of snowbirds would come in. So it happened to be a Dodge 3500 diesel, but it was manual. If you know the surface of an alignment machine, it's very slick, and his foot slipped off the clutch. And this truck picked up enough traction to go off of the rack into the alignment machine and into the wall.
Oh, no.
But understanding negligence from an honest mistake and being able to now build a policy and a procedure around it, this is a mistake. This is a mistake you honestly came from. Now, if you're going to crash the next 6 cars, we've got a trend that you probably don't belong loading the cars on the alignment rack. That, I think, is our fault as leaders, to identify. But everybody thought I was going to fire him on the spot and I was just going to roast him. And even he was like, man, I'm going to end up back out on the streets. Or hopefully another shop hires me with this 3 months of experience. And I said, this was a mistake. Let's just pick up the pieces and figure out how to not let it happen again. That builds a whole layer of loyalty with people that you can't duplicate.
There's a lot in that.
Yeah.
Have you carried that philosophy forward through business?
I am, and I have. However, we've built sizable companies, and fortunately, but unfortunately, you need access to a large group of people, and you just can't home grow everybody to keep up with, revenue and production output. So, but then that's where you get into recruiting and making sure you find the right people and building an organization that attracts the right people.
Yep. And cascading that leadership style, right? Breeding leaders that can act and behave in that way.
Yep.
Okay, so let's help me and help my audience understand, because I'm going to have more questions around this. But the company that you built, how big did you build it? How long did it take?
Employee count?
Employee count. I mean, whatever information you're able to
what was
share.
interesting is I started the company in 2012, 2013, and that was a startup. I didn't go acquire another business, even though acquisition is what I've gotten into, for the last, 8 years or so. Startup. So I had to learn systems, accounting, onboarding of people, customer processing payments, how do you count it? So that story, we went from a garage and me and two other guys and started with one job, right? And then we built it into one of the largest in the country. And at the time of selling, we were 800 employees or so.
800. And you sold twice, no?
Twice, yes.
Okay, so help my audience understand that. There's a lot of people out there that still don't understand M&A, private equity, how this all works.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm going to get questions if we don't explain it somewhere along the lines of, how did he sell his business twice? I don't understand.
Yeah, so I had a mentor early on, and I was growing and funding, the growth myself. I just chose to not take a paycheck and use that money for growth. So it was very heavy on the initial investment side. I started buying other businesses, and, I started getting phone calls of, hey, what are you up to? Like, how are you doing that? And at the time, I bought my first business outside of the company I started in 2017. The gentleman I bought it from, actually talked to him on the way over here.
Oh, no kidding.
Still a dear friend of mine to this day. We ended up building quite a bit together over the years, and it's just amazing. And super grateful for that relationship. But the very first business that I bought outside of the one that I started, I'm still super close with that guy today.
That's cool.
So, I started growing through M&A. I started realizing where, areas are more complicated.
Well, at what point, how big was the business before you started growing by M&A?
In revenue?
Either in revenue or...
Before we probably had 20 employees, and we were maybe 4 million in revenue.
And that's when you started to acquire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And the business that I acquired was doing 3 million. So we went from 4 to 7. And I used to have this mapped out in my head because people used to ask it a lot. First year in business, we did $100,000. Second year, we did $500,000. Third year, we did 1.5. Then we did 4, and then we did 10, and then and it continued on up until ultimately sold and left.
At that point, you were doing 4 million. You bought a company that was doing 3 million. I've been fortunate enough to scale a company through the 4 million, 5 million mark. I know at that point, cash flow is still tough.
Yeah, especially in my business, it was heavy accounts receivable.
Heavy accounts receivable. I mean, you still and I'm sure that commercial. Were you doing a lot of commercial, or is it just?
So in that line of business, the main payer, you have to bill the insurance company.
Insurance. So you are on terms too, right? Insurance company paid on terms.
Most insurance companies have a very specific way they want to be billed, and there's certain line items. We like to say it's the healthcare industry for auto.
That's funny. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did you structure that first deal?
So that deal, it was a business that was acquired. This has been sort of my knack. This friend that I told you about, he acquired a distressed business. The business as a whole, was losing close to $100,000 a month. But it was a sizable business. The whole entire business itself was, probably 60 million in revenue.
Oh, wow.
And, he was one of the early, he was actually the one that pushed me over to the edge to do the deal with private equity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So some of those early relationships that we forged just really paid dividends in life, not just through business, but just learning and mentorship and just good camaraderie. But there was a section of the business, the collision repair business, that when you're on the retail side, you're swiping a credit card, you got a product, you can move pretty fast, mechanical turnarounds, like you go into somebody's home with an AC repair, even if you're changing the whole unit, you can typically turn that job around in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And you're getting paid, right? You got some nuances in that space, home warranty companies and, catastrophe where there was a storm that caused it and the insurance company's paying. But a lot of those services, the homeowner's responsible for, right? And it's very complicated to mix that in with a retail business.
Yep. Because
they operate totally different. You don't just call the insurance company and go, hey, can you give me a credit card? Here's the bill. Like, it doesn't work that way. And good retail guys understand that. And it's just somebody that didn't want to be in that section of the business. So it was an asset sale. We valued the assets at their market value. I gave him a down payment. He gave me terms on the rest. He paid it off in 6 months. And that was deal number 2. Well, the second location, but first acquisition.
Okay. So that it was partly seller financed then. Okay. Yeah. Is that an avenue that you would recommend if somebody wanted to start getting into acquisitions to scale their business?
Yeah. Seller financing's huge and not a lot of people know about it.
Yeah, as opposed to we hear about the SBA, we hear about loans and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I went the SBA route early and because I bought a building through it and I think I got an SBA loan when we were up to 5 locations, probably 10 million or something like that. Mm-hmm. So seller financing, sometimes you see where it just doesn't have the same value, or maybe an owner's made a lot of money along the way. There are people that just absolutely want to do a deal and they want to cash out. Like that's okay. But to cash out, you either have to have all the equity or, you have to have a bank, and your traditional bank, especially in this market, they're going to take the proved out earnings and they're going to apply a very low multiple on that, maybe 1-2 times leverage, especially for first time type buyers. And, if the business makes $100,000 and you can only get a loan for $200 because that's how the, cash flow equation works. Maybe you have a vision that you can double that business and you can triple the earnings, right? And maybe you can't finance it today, but if that seller will take that journey with you, instead of maybe taking $100,000 today, let's say he wants $500,000, and we're big arbitrage thinkers and platform thinkers, right? So if you can buy businesses at 2 and 5 times, but you have a platform that's worth 10, you're making 400-500% in value increase just by acquiring the business. Integration and operating and improving it, totally different story. Don't confuse the two, because I've gotten that wrong over the years too.
Yeah, you can't wave a magic wand and be
the deal is super easy to structure and get done, actually. It's operating and integrating that makes it so much tougher. But so it's just another option.
Okay. All right, let's talk about this. So what are the things that they don't tell you, and what are some of the real struggles when scaling a business?
I ended up going through in 21 like a really tough time. So there's phases in a business that you have to understand. And you kind of talked about, hey, I've scaled through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 million, right? What it takes to run a business at 1 million is typically not the same infrastructure it takes at 10 million. So to be able to build something, and I had $1 billion vision for this company, and to take a company from a couple $100 million to $1 billion, you have to have an infrastructure that can scale. And at 21, we were still growing, and we were still growing rapidly, but you're starting to break systems. We were on an amazing homegrown software that if you don't have a vision to get your company to $50 to $100 million, which takes a slightly different infrastructure, you got to understand all these different systems you need to make a company work. And we originally started on systems that you had to bounce information between the two. This is before interface connections were a conversation and being able to send data, and you're just manually pushing a lot of information from one to another, and then you're having to test the data to make sure it's accurate. And we were on a system that was an all-in-one. So it was an accounting tool, it was an estimating tool, it was a production management tool. From an efficiency standpoint and having to run a back office, most efficient tool on the market. Because it didn't have a lot of market share, it was also harder for us there was an integration period with employees where, you know how this is, even if you switch trades, you got some people that are on Service Titan, you got other ones that are on other systems, right? And you could kind of figure it out, but plug and play is so much easier.
Sure.
We started getting advice. Well, you got to upgrade this to the mainstream, what everybody's on. And, it was really tough, so going, you got 800 employees, you got payroll system, you got an accounting system, you have an estimating system, CRM and a B2B isn't in that industry is much needed as it is in a retail business. And where do you start?
Yeah.
And we had grown to such this huge infrastructure
in a short amount of time.
Yeah. And we had this consulting company. I had a private equity company offer us $300 million for the company. And phenomenal guy to this day. We're actually we're in an overlapping business together. Just amazing private equity guy. Not all private equity is bad. Most of it is, but not all of it is.
Fair enough.
So it's your job as an entrepreneur, if you're going to sell your business to private equity, to find people you morally, ethically line up with and have similar views. And one of the things that came out of that diligence for us was our IT and our systems sucked. Wasn't that the system we were on sucked? It was, do you understand how much manual work is being done in your HR and your accounting department versus your operations and your management platform and your IT team who's got, 6 different, types of domains and kind of, 9 different internet service providers and how do you bring all that together to really make the organization work? And in 21, I ran into that wall head on. And it was so tough because it was like, I didn't have the skill set at the time. I'm not one to tell, to fluff anything up. If I don't know, I want to go know. Right. And I want to dig and I want to learn. So, I just noticed all these systems are broken. Our people are super stressed out. And it's like the amount of manual work having to be done. I fortunately ended up having a mentor in that time. Still talk to him this day, and I hold him with the highest regard. This guy took an idea, and he's doing, billions of dollars now in 5 years. Wow. His background was IT engineering.
Okay.
So, not that can seem cold for people, but just on the back end of just thinking, how do all these systems talk to each other? Where most people want to promote just keep it simple. It's really hard to scale simple. And So 21, here I am. We've got this, couple $100 million business, and I now am getting advice that to scale the company to $1 billion, I got to rebuild everything. And, you get into things for certain reasons, and before I know it, now I'm an IT guy in the back office, and I'm with developers, and now I'm with consultants, and we're converting systems, and
because that stuff takes years at that size, right?
Years. I was talking to my CFO about this earlier, and how long did it take? 2 years. That's 18 months to 2 years is what I've seen from every big turnover, which is. I'm super grateful for that period of time and where I struggled in that, and super grateful that I had such a mentor that next best business advice you can go find yourself a mentor that's already where you want to be. So I felt very fortunate in that time to go, okay, how do I rebuild this thing, cradle to grave? And when I say we had to rebuild, we ended up having to implement a new payroll system. We had to custom build an ERP system, and don't let a lot of companies fool you. Like, out of the box products are built for the masses. We know when things are built for the masses, they're really not going to be custom tailored to what your business may need. So you really learn about customization. We had to change our estimating platform, and then, business intelligence and reporting, right? So enterprise level reporting that kind of sits over all these systems and talks to all of them, pulls the whole loop together, and that's really at scale how you're able to elevate yourself and operate. If not, like, you kind of kill yourself in this manual process. And going through that, we probably spent about $4 million of development and techs and cutover and crossover. And when you've got to merge legacy data and you're dealing with payroll and people's paychecks, right? Like, you got to cut over 800 people to a new system. And I remember our first cutover, I'm like sitting there going, please just, did everybody get paid? Okay, 90% of the people got paid. There's 10% of issues, and you got to dive in and even to the one person that's affected by that transition, like, I was so connected to the people that, like, these things like would pierce me in a different way, and but here's what we came out with. We came out with very scalable software. I got a school of hard knocks on development and IT infrastructure and how to build software, and the company that bought us a couple of years ago, they're still on that same infrastructure. So, so long-winded, but
that's okay.
But it was one of my biggest challenges in business. We got way too big for our systems. So now, that being one of my most painful times in business, I now overbuild every company out of the gate. So we spend the money up front, we over-engineer, we build really big scalable systems that these companies typically are way too small for. But it now allows us to grow into it with ease.
Right.
That initial onboarding of a small company into this big infrastructure, there's a lot of pain in that too. So there's no easiness that comes from any of this.
And I was going to say, that comes with a different set of problems, right? Because that's what I did 8 years ago. I went from a very small system to essentially a system that's built for Fortune 500 companies. And it took me years to integrate the team into it because of the complexity behind it. So when you say, like, the difference between simplicity and complexity, there's a real dichotomy there. And it's so nuanced, like the line that you have to walk, to be able to get it to work either direction. That's really interesting.
So experiencing it at scale where everybody's like begging, there's got to be a better way, an easier way to do this. And then you implement it, and that's just painful, right? But then, small, and what we've put some of the smaller companies through, where they're like, can't it just be simple? Just handwrite what I'm supposed to be looking at versus I got to log in here and I got to
post the notes. Okay. All right. So you sold that company, you sold it twice. And what did you end up exiting for last year? You don't have to say the actual number, but like what
Yeah,
was
the company was valued like right around 140 million.
Okay. All right. So one of the things I want to understand, I try to challenge my audience as well, and by asking this question or something similar, what is it that you think? No, what is it that my audience thinks that they understand about scaling a company, but they might be getting wrong?
Are they in the process of scaling?
Let's
or
say they
want
are.
to? Oh, they're in the process of scaling, and
Let's say they've made the decision to scale,
to go buy
and
another
just
business.
or scale organically. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just get bigger.
So we've got friends and people I've crossed paths with over the years, and I have fallen into this too, where this shiny stuff sometimes is interesting. And you growth is exciting. You know, it's one of the basic human needs. If you're not growing, yes, you're dying, or if you're staying flat, like maybe that's a comfort zone for most people, but in the entrepreneurial spirit, nobody wants to hear their company's going backwards.
No.
They want to, yeah, we're growing double digits, and that's very fun, especially if you bring the team along with you while you're building. And that's what you know, these new companies that we've started and these other businesses that we bought and scaled, we've allowed, and if you think of software and open source software versus closed software, right? When you've got the public or the teams helping you build, you can actually move much faster, and you're building a layer of connectivity. But if you're so focused on the growth, don't get blinded by the shiny stuff. You know, I tell people I manage by trend. If there's an incident that pops up, I don't kind of hit all the, I don't unplug all the speakers and shut the show down. Like, I listen for trends in the business. And this is what's great about enterprise level analytics is, you know, you're able to monitor trends, but your people, you've got to give them a voice. And, you know, we were in a management meeting last week, and you know, this particular company has grown 1,000% in 12 months. You know, so if you can
in 12 months,
yeah. So if you can picture, you know, we took that company from idea, made first acquisition, built infrastructure, and then started scaling it. We at least put together an initial core team that said, "Hey, here's the vision. This is what we want to do, and what do you think? Like, how should we do this? Or what do you think that we should do with this piece of software? Or from the ground floor, how would this be used or interacted with?" And that's been good, these go rounds, but like listening to your team along the way. I made a lot of mistakes in you know, some of the early days of our career. And I asked one of my old partners just a few months ago, I said, "Hey, if you had to look back and give me some advice," this guy I got a lot of respect for, built a phenomenal business out in Omaha, Nebraska, like salt of the earth people out there. They work hard. Yeah. It's big town, but it's real small town mentality. And, you know, he said, "I wish you would have just let us lean in with you a little more. You wanted to take the whole weight of the world on your shoulders and protect us all from the pain and the building issues that you were going through. You know, if you'd have just like listened and leaned into us a little bit more, we would have been able to help." And me, I've always been a builder, fixer, provider, and I've always wanted to be, you know, that army general that if we're in war and I got to show my people we got to go into the battlefield, like I'm going to walk to the front of the line. You know, now I probably need to stay a lot more shielded, but that was my original mentality. I don't want my team to suffer. Like, I'll take all the blows for them, and that led to me probably having my hands on too much stuff, right? Not releasing more leadership and control over to our team. And now, it's swung the other way where I'm like, I don't want to be involved with any of it. I want to govern. I want to give you guys all the advice. I want to empower you. I want to connect the tools and the systems, but I want to let you guys build the company out now. And now hiring CEOs to be able to coach and go through the pain that I went through versus actually being there running the joysticks is it's been fulfilling.
Where do you draw the line between trusting your gut instincts as the leader of the organization and listening to a team that may unanimously say that you're doing it wrong?
Yeah, interesting that you say that, because one of the things, and this is where board and governance really, you hear about the boardroom and, the investors, like really it's a group of really smart people that are removed from it, some that are in it, and they're helping govern, right? So, some of our tougher decisions in business, I'm the last one to vote. And even though, I chair our company and I'm ultimately responsible, if I get around the table of 9 really competent people and they've all voted a certain way, if I've done the right job hiring them and putting the right people in place, is a really low probability that I'm not going to be in agreement with them.
Yeah.
And some of the toughest decisions that we've had to make, when it gets around to me to take a vote, even though there's a formality to it, I go, my vote's not even needed. So drawing the line between your intuitive sense and trusting your team, you forge a lot of good out of also letting them make mistakes. And we're so big now as an organization, and I'm still a really large investor in the company I sold. You can't run all those things, so you have to trust your team. They're not going to make the decisions the same exact way that you're going to. They're not going to get all these things right. But if they're competent, they're going to trip up here and there. But most of the time, if you empower them, they're going to get it right. So I relied heavily on my intuition in the early days to fight for survival. And now my brain has kind of pivoted more towards flagging where there's going to be major risk and not letting people run into the brick wall head on.
Interesting. Okay.
But I want them to bump their knee and, fall down without the training wheels. And
get a little scrape, maybe some stitches every now and again. All right, good. Here's a question I actually get often as a result of the show, and even just to me, because of the business that I've grown. How, in your opinion, does someone successfully transition from a technician mindset to an owner mindset?
It's not a jump everybody can make.
Yeah.
It's not a jump everybody can make. And even backing up before just transitioning from technician to owner, I've seen people make that transition and actually make less money.
Mm-hmm.
Most small businesses break even or lose money. That is a data fact about the country and the businesses, okay? Yeah. As a technician, if you're really highly skilled, I had technicians making $300,000-$400,000 a year. That's not a bad living. That's a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can build a really nice lifestyle out of that. If you desire for more and you have an appetite for risk and you've absolutely decided that business ownership and entrepreneurship is for you, you have to understand who you are, what your skill sets are, and it takes a lot more than a singular skill set to be able to build a company. We tell people now, we hire for what the business needs, not necessarily what the people want. So if you're going to go into HVAC business, right? You need salespeople, you need accountants that can count it, you need a CRM, you need the technicians that can do the work. So you have a technician that's going to jump out, but he doesn't know about all the other things, to build a business. So if you're going to make that transition, you have to cover the core basis of what it takes to operate a business. And you're maybe not going to have any clue what any of that means, but you got to go find people smarter than you that have been there, that are experts in that area, whether it's IT, HR, accounting, sales, and you've got to build that team. The companies always need that core team that have offsetting skill sets that blended together, can move a big machine.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move to close here soon. You still good on time?
Yeah, no, totally good on time.
Cool.
On my side.
All right. So I liken this next question to you had a tool belt when you were a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
You were coming up and you had this tool belt, you had a bunch of tools in it, you had your favorite tools.
Yeah.
You're wearing a different kind of tool belt now.
Yep.
You sold your business. Now you're in the business of other businesses.
Yeah.
So what is that tool belt now? What is in it? And how do you use those tools?
Yeah. I took this to heart young, and this is how I built big teams younger. I had gotten some business advice from an early mentor who, he said one simple thing that just resonated with me. He said, what if you would always make this comment, what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? And the next morning after I had heard that, I had an employee that was messaging me for keys to a gate. And I remembered sitting back going, am I really needed for the keys to the gate? Or do we need to build better processes and systems that can enable them so they don't need me? And I started to hire managers and give them more autonomy and kind of give them guardrails. So I learned this early on. You can't operate 50 sites across 6 states if you don't end up empowering and trusting people. You hope the processes and procedures you built along the way can get out to scale and be consumable, and people can learn and kind of stay in those guardrails. Guardrails, people figure out how to get out of them. You've been on the freeway where you've seen a car that's upside down on the opposite side of traffic, and you're like, how did that guy flip over the median and end up across 6 lanes of traffic? Was he not just in his lane going the speed limit? What could have happened? And that's very symbolic in business, right? People figure out how to get out of the guardrails. So as I scaled, I empowered a lot of people, going through a business sale process and going through turbulent waters. I would clinch in a little bit heavier, but I hired a team early on. So at a time where even when we were doing $4 or $5 million, and I could have made $1 million a year and just, been the guy and did that for 10 years, wouldn't have been any better than the whole reason I left my job, right?
Yeah.
So instead of paying myself, I paid that salary to a manager, and somebody that was qualified to run it. And as I view it now, right, I want to make investments in companies, and I want to empower other people to build, not make the same mistakes that I made, but I need to do it now through governance and building really good guardrails in a system for people to work in. And it's the same if you're going to scale a business, but now we've got a dozen businesses across a bunch of different sectors. So I can't be a subject matter on all of it, and I can't be the one running all of it. So, it's really been empowering the C-suite and the leadership team and making sure they're complementary and showing them their blind spots and just light touches now. Hey man, I had a guy call me the other day, and he's making some really tough decisions in one of the companies, and tells me the situation, and I said, so what can I do for you? I just kind of talking through it, I said, hey, the decision that you're going to make, I'm going to support. And if I make the decision and give it to you, you've still got to operate the business. And if I make the wrong decision and you've got to operate the business, I'm not, I'm trying to coach and teach you. So is it the right decision? Here's what I think about the scenario, but don't let it sway what your gut and what you feel is right as the operator. And you need to make the decision, because the decision you're going to make, you also have to own it, right? And I have to hold you accountable to that. We're not going to make all the right decisions, but we've got to get it right a big percentage of the time. So very different than being in the CEO chair and driving the ship. Really empowering teams now that we've put in place. And you know, to have $1 billion vision, that for me is the way we're going to do it.
That's interesting. So, I mean, even taking it a step further, right? Technician to owner to almost coach.
Yeah.
You know, so $1 billion vision.
Yeah.
That's where you want to take this next venture.
That's where we will take it.
That's where you will take it.
It's not a want anymore. It's a reality. And,
So let me ask you this. You know, in the job that you worked, you plateaued, you know, because it wasn't about the money, it was about the growth. In the company you built, you plateaued because it was about the next thing. What's the next thing? Or do you think this is the last thing? Is this thing your legacy?
It's a great question, and that's a very deep question. My last business, I wouldn't say I plateaued, because the business can scale to billions of dollars. You know, my mentor is doing it right alongside in the same exact space. Who's now morphed into a great friend and just somebody that I check in with and we talk regularly. There was a lot of things that went on that you know, I don't know if you've heard this, but as an entrepreneur, never waste a good recession. You learn so much, right? And you know, I felt like the last 3 years, I went through 3 recessions. You know, we went through COVID, navigated it really well. We went through these major system changeovers and survived and came out the other side with a really good product. But, you know, the finance markets were crazy. You know, we were able to leverage and buy businesses on 4 or 5% interest. You know, you fast forward 24 months and, you know, that's now 11% interest facility. And I've got a friend, he's in one of the largest franchise businesses in the country. It's $1 billion group. And this is why it's important to surround yourself with good people. Like variable interest, like, okay, like how much is it going to go up? Nobody pictured inflation was going to take off as crazy as it did. And, you know, my interest payments doubled in 12 months. You want to talk about, you know, 15 million of earnings and, you know, half or more of your free cash flow goes to interest and you know, you got the rest tied up in accounts receivable. In the process of that, one of the guys that I had started alongside, my very first building that I went into, I partnered with another business owner, and he came along for the ride 8 years, and we did some really awesome things together. He ended up passing away in a plane crash, him and his wife. And, you know, I'm going through, you know, we make it out of COVID. You know, we're still scaling, and all of this we grew. There was not a year under my leadership that the company went backwards. Some same store sales, but we always were able to grow and acquire and you know, you make it through COVID, and that's a big pivot for a lot of businesses, right? Like we had the state came in our buildings and said, if this thing is not shut down in an hour, we're pulling your licenses, right? Like that was a crazy time.
Yeah.
And you know, we're a big business in California, and it just was very different than how it was here in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, you fast forward to, all right, we got to rebuild this whole infrastructure. It's just like stab my eyeballs, like bleeding pain, like in your head, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, now your interest is, you know, going crazy on you. So you learn about finance and you know, my friend that I was going to tell you about, he hedged his. I didn't know you could hedge. You could secure a facility at 4%. You could go out and spend $1 million, $2 million and hedge the interest that if it goes up, it's like a reverse mortgage, right? Like, and you know, here everybody else's interest payments doubled, and he's now getting a check that's offsetting, bringing his interest back to 4%. And I just remembered going, man, if I would have just learned one more pivot, like, you know, and then my best friend passing away, you know. I'm just sitting there like, man, this has been a crazy 3-4 years. Like, I'm tired of servicing debt. And, now at this point I had already sold to private equity and we're just growing, to chase the 3 times. So my passion did fade because it really wasn't why I had gotten into it. I really want to build big companies with awesome people. But how does it feel knowing all your hard work is getting paid out in interest or back to investors? And I'm not saying that it's not good to have investors and to share in it, but when all of it starts going back to that, like, it made me question why I was doing what I was doing. So I found myself in a position to go, okay, cool. We got the company in a good spot now and we can sell the business. I could have sold the business a year earlier and made $100 million more. Still burn into me this day, but you learn from those, right?
Sure.
Like, I've got a business now that's 3 times the size of the one I sold. So,
right.
None of it was, lost on me, through the journey, but, kind of getting to the end of that cycle going, I had always told myself this: if I ended up becoming less efficient and my passion started to fade, and it started to, right? I was going through all this turbulent time, and I said I would take a hard look at myself and figure out what was next. So we ultimately sold the business, and not, maybe this gets edited out, maybe it doesn't, but I had money wired into my account from the proceeds of a business sale, and the same exact day I closed an escrow on a new business that I bought. So I never really stopped moving.
Yeah.
And, for me, that was healthy, because what it did was it opened up, I didn't want to be restricted kind of in one silo. It opened up to all these different things that I could go do and do it a different way and take all the skills and all the heartache and pain over the years. And I had that fire again. And yeah.
It's interesting. So I'm listening to you and I'm kind of recounting some of the things that we talked about. And I've told you I've got my 4 pillars, and I'm putting this one through the filter of freedom. Yeah. Right. And I'm seeing kind of your journey, from way back in the day to your pursuit of freedom, getting out of the situation you were in, your pursuit of freedom from, the stagnancy, the lack of growth in the job that you were working.
Yeah.
And then just following that same pattern, it just seems like every stage of your life is a new stage of freedom for you.
Yeah.
So how do you define freedom?
America, man. America, man. Like, the fact that you could be a kid from the foster care system, I didn't go to college, and I was able, to build these companies and connect these people. That's freedom. We literally have the ability to go out and do whatever we set our mind to, and that is not what the rest of the world is like. I had taken a trip to Cuba about a year ago, and just 2 years ago, they started allowing private business. And really seeing, like, guys that are making shirts and hats, and, like, you're like, what do you mean you guys, you couldn't start a business before, and if they found out, you'd be jailed? Like, it really opens up your mind about the rest of the world and how truly blessed we are to be in this country and to have free enterprise and to be able to go take an idea and turn it into something and then be able to scale that. And yeah, freedom really is living in America, to have the ability to go do these things and not be persecuted for it, or to really be held back. And, there's a lot of people that want to argue about a capitalist system and how zero-sum gain, if one person's really winning, another's losing. You see these articles of business owner makes billions and pays no tax. That is garbage.
Yeah.
Every time I run payroll, I pay $200,000 in payroll tax. Every time I sell a product, we owe money to the state, and we pay millions of dollars in tax. And the system is designed to empower somebody that understands that it is designed to grow and promote free enterprise. The backbone of this country is entrepreneurship, and that is the way the code was written.
Yeah.
You can, yes, have no capital gains tax by buying a new piece of equipment that can help grow your business next year. It's an amazing system. But there's a universal law that comes with it that is on my heart lately. If I heard this from a business owner in Arizona, actually, really big business, billion-dollar company. And he said, if you have been blessed with the ability to build and take, if you do not develop the skill to give back, you'll have the first two taken from you. And I think about my life over the years, and I've been fortunate. I've made millions of dollars. I've fought for it. I've worked for it. I've forged it out of being broke for most of, the early years of business. But now in my mind, I'm really curious on how you build structured give back, right? And we use this word nonprofit and enablement. That's a big initiative of our companies, right? It's one thing to go give somebody in need $1, right? But there's this higher power of being able to take that $1 and then give that to somebody that has scaled, give back, and you're enabling them to touch more. So, for example, you're going to a fundraiser and you give this group of people $10,000, and what they're doing with that $10,000 is they're putting on this event, right? And that $10,000 has allowed this event to get put on. This event has now raised $5 million to be able to give back. And that I am so ingrained in right now, trying to understand what's the most amount of impact we can create and being able to give back. And I'm really touched by the youth out there right now and how critical it is for us to provide them the best resources and training and tools to go out there and to take on the real world. And there's a lot of troubled youth. My own story, right? Yeah. I was fortunate that, I had auto dealership mentors early on that said, kid, I'm going to give you everything I got just because I understand that if I help you and you go do good in the world, this is a cascading effect and it's multiplying. So that's really what's been on my heart lately. Yeah. So.
All right. Moving to close here pretty soon. Jacob, what's a question that you wish more people would ask you?
Would ask me in regular passing?
Any question. Or maybe the most important question.
What's the most important people that I would wish people would ask me? How can I contribute?
And how would you answer?
If they were asking me how I can contribute to them or they can contribute to the world, for me, I give back. I hold nothing back with people now. If somebody wants business advice, and some people may tell you that this is a bad approach because there's a lot of consultants out there, right? It's not... if there's an entrepreneur and they're trying to build and they want to know how I took an idea and turned it into a company that, was worth $200 million, and now, we're on to $500 million and $1 billion, there's not... knowing what I've been able to do for people and providing jobs and the customers that we serve and now giving back to these organizations that we're involved with, if there is something that I have up here for free and I can give that to somebody who could potentially go do what I did, and that's going to create a really big value contributor to the marketplace and to those that need, you can take it. It's a lot harder to get a hold of people that this is another thing that I figured out. Some of the best givers in business are the hardest to get a hold of, but when you do get a hold of them, they're not selfish. And they love enabling and helping. And I'm feeling that intimately right now in my life. And you know, I always, hey, how do I build a business? Should I do? Yes, absolutely, you should. What do you think I should do? If it was me, I would take these 10 steps. But, you know, you've got to go through a journey. But, you know, you can call me anytime if it's, you know, if you're going through a tough time. So anything that I have up here, you know, we've done over $1 billion in revenue. I'm a kid from the streets with no college education, you know, and our people do it with our hands in service, right? And I've made a ton of $1 million mistakes. And if there's something that I have that I could give to somebody for free, I just need them to ask. So stay curious and ask a lot of questions.
Somebody that I respect very much said to me once, Josh, the only way to keep what you have is to give it away.
Yeah.
And that's always stuck with me.
Love that.
All right. In the spirit of that, Jacob, where can people find you?
I'm really only accessible in one area, and that's on LinkedIn, even though LinkedIn is getting extremely spammed these days. Okay. But I'm on LinkedIn, Jacob Tilzer, Tilzer, and I do read a lot of those messages. I probably only go in once a week as part of my routine, but made a lot of great connections on there of people just reaching out, so I can be contacted on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. I know that this was a long conversation, but I appreciate it. My audience will appreciate it. And I just appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me.